Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to our Saturday morning fantasy show with the crew, me and Reggie, and uh, the Hawk from Smash Up Sports. So it's a bright Saturday morning, and we have two NFL games on tap today. Both of them with playoff implications. We start out the morning at 10 o'clock here on the West Coast with Houston versus Kansas City. And as we know, Patrick Holmes sustained an injury last week, but is still set to play this week. Uh, Also, we have the second game, which would be the Steelers against the Ratbirds. Right now, we own the tiebreaker. We have beat them here at home, and we're hoping to extend that streak of beating them. And we shall see what is happening here. I see my man Reggie is down here, and I'll be bringing him in a minute. But before we go into our show, don't forget to subscribe and donate to our Cash App. You can see it's scrolling down there on the bottom. And hey, let's get this show on the road. Good morning,
What is
Reg.
going on?
Oh
Man, very
man,
good, man. Very good.
well, there's a lot of things going on down in your city. A lot of
Yeah, man.
things happening. And I kind of want to get into that a little bit because
Okay.
we okay now. As of now, they're saying that you're going to cut Kurt before
Not a huge fan of that, man, but I see that. I read that report today.
before the 10 million kicks in.
Mhm.
Uh, but well, maybe your concerns are the same as mine. Why aren't you a fan of that?
Only because I think that he has done enough that I think that he is still tradable. And I know a lot of people bring up the fact that he has a no trade clause on there, but we've seen no trade clauses traded before. And I also think that teams around the spring that's when they tend to get desperate for a QB. And when you look at where Kirk is, Kirk's about mid to low tier in 2024 right now, but there's 32 teams. His yardage is still in the top 10. He has still other statistics that are in the top 10 or 15. So I think that that would have been at least tradable. And I would like to try to get something for him to salvage some of the 62.5 million that we gave him this year. I would like to have gotten something for that. But I feel like once stories like this get out, James, he's a distressed asset. I don't think that teams will probably just wait it out. If I'm a GM on another team now, I'm just going to wait it out when something like this comes out. So I think we've kind of that ship is sailed. And I don't know that a lot of fans down here anyway are really concerned with it one way or the other. They just want to see Penix out there. But we know how that tends to go in sports in general.
But aren't you concerned if Penix gets hurt? Where do you go then?
Yeah. And it's interesting because if Penix gets hurt, this is kind of why we had the two quarterback situation to begin with. This is kind of why we had Kirk, but I don't know that if we had Penix, we would have ever had Kirk. So I can't even say that. Like that would be like revisionist history for me to say that that's why we had two quarterbacks. I think circumstance maybe be why we have two quarterbacks, because if we had Penix and we knew we had Penix, we probably would not have got Kirk. So I don't know that that's ever been a concern for them genuinely, and maybe they just don't care. But it is interesting to go from, because you pretty much go from the cover being completely full to the cover being bare from a quarterback perspective, you know?
And what does this do to not only the fantasy value, but the psyche of Drake London, you know, Kyle Pitts? I mean, at least, Kurt was getting the ball down the field to Drake occasionally,
Yeah,
they
Drake
had
was
some
respectable for me
success.
this year. He was respectable because he's my wide receiver on one of my home teams. and he's been respectable this year. What I'm thinking is the team has seen something from Penix in practice and stuff, because we all know what a lot of these players, James, they see a lot more of them than we do. So they've clearly seen something. I think if they have been watching Penix in practice and didn't think he was ready for this step, then they'd be like, nah, we're not going to. But I mean, why not run him out there against the Giants? I mean, this is a perfect spot to start him, right?
Yeah, that would be true. And also, are you afraid of teams, stacking up the box to stop Bijan?
Not necessarily. I think teams should be doing that anyway, and it ain't working. So it's like sometimes when you have great players, and the players like Bijan don't stack the box because he's a pass catching back. You don't want to stack the box on pass catching back, so just throw it out. You can run out to the flat and just throw it out to the flat. And if everybody's rushing in, there you go. I think he's a harder back to stop because of his pass catching ability, to be honest with you. That's one of the reasons why I'm glad that we got him. So I don't really know there's any one way to stop Bijan. I just think that we got to see what the quarterback looks like. The quarterback. Our issue, even with Kirk, has not been passing the eye test, even though I have been caping for Kirk to a certain degree because the statistics aren't terrible. But he's not passing the eye test, though, and the Raiders' loss was a terrible loss. So when you have all that stuff happening, I mean, that's why we're here where we're at with Michael Penix getting the shot he's getting.
Okay. All right. Okay. Some other things. Well, how did you do last week?
I lost last week, man. So now I'm in the third place game. So I lost. I was in my championship game, and now I'm still in two. So if I'm say in like 2 or 3 leagues, I'm still in it. Maybe 4 or 5. Because I gotta look at the Sports Crib League, because I think we do that playoffs a little different in those leagues, right? Because we have like 2 weeks. It's a little different in those.
Round 1 is 2 weeks. You play the same opponent.
Okay.
So I think it kind of looks like you and I might be shaping up for that title championship game.
Are you serious? I didn't even know that it was even looking. I didn't know I was even looking that great. Like I looked at it and I see that I'm doing decent, but I'm not winning. I'm not winning definitively there enough for me to be feeling very good about that. But I do like my other teams. I got 5 counting these. Then James, if I count these 2, then I would have made it to the playoffs in about 5 leagues.
Yeah,
I'm like 11.
I hadn't looked up the playoff rounds, but I know I beat my opponent the first week.
I did too. The first week.
So I think you're 2 playing 3, and I'm 1 playing 4, something like that.
Okay. Well, look at that there. So then I'm in about 5. You made me feel a bit better, man, because I was coming into this conversation 3 for 11, and now I'm 5 for 11.
You're in the running for the gold T-shirt. Looks like.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to get it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some other kind of favorable matchups this week. We have some 2 games going on as soon as the show is over.
Yeah, as soon as we get to jump right into football. It's very nice.
Yeah, we got Kansas City at Houston, the first game, and then of course the second game is the Ratbirds against the Steelers. Couple of things, developments here in our game. We have the long snapper, giving us bulletin board material.
The long snappers, man, getting paid. I did a segment on long snappers getting paid this past. And when I was going down my who's getting paid, when I did a show on my Just a Stat show, we were doing a contract show. It's kind of around time free agency, right? There were so many long snappers on those lists, man. Those long snappers were getting paid this past offseason. I'm like, hey, well, they re-signed their long snapper. If your long snapper was up to be re-signed, he probably got re-signed. Just gonna put that out.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Like the money that's in special teamers and guys.
You make a living doing that, man, for sure.
Of course. I mean, you can make a good living being a punter now.
That's true. Very true. You know what I mean? Shout out to Pat McAfee. You know what I mean?
So speaking of that Houston game, as we saw last week, Patrick Mahomes out in the fourth quarter with a high ankle sprain. But of course, according to Patrick, he's going to play today, and I'm sure.
Strange. I would not do it if I was a team. I wouldn't do it, man.
No.
No, why? Why? You're 13-1. Why? They've lost like one game, right? Are they 13-1 or are they? I gotta look at their records. They lost one or two games.
They've only lost one game, but Buffalo
So
is.
why not sit them for a week?
Well,
you guys aren't even in the same division.
Because Buffalo is hot on their heels, and
how many wins is okay, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah, for
Buffalo,
sure.
And Buffalo owns the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and you don't want to have to go to Buffalo, man, right?
So
if you don't have to, why go there, right?
Yeah, I mean, even though you're 3-0 against Buffalo, but
I mean, eventually it's going to be their day, though, right? So sometimes when I see stats like that, it scares me because when people they're like 5-0, 6-0, that donut doesn't always last. I mean, sometimes it's the other guy's day at some point. We all know that if you go through like the late '80s, Jordan had that O. He had that O for a while when he was going up against several teams, and then he broke through, and then you see what happened. I feel like eventually the Bills may break through with how Josh Allen's playing, but 1-5, man, Mahomes is hard to stop. That's why I don't know if I'd run him out there this week, but they know more than I do.
Well, they do have a favorable matchup against the Texans defense. And
you got to run Pacheco out there this week, man. I benched Pacheco and I put him back in. So when I thought Carson Wentz was playing, I benched Pacheco. I read yesterday that Mahomes was playing. I put Pacheco back in. What do you think about that?
What do you think about Hollywood Brown making his debut supposedly today?
Is it today?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, those debut games are always scary because you know what scares me is coming off of a significant injury and then snap counts. You know what I mean? Because it's not like the guy usually goes out there and is exactly where he left off. But it only takes a couple passes with the kind of receiver that Hollywood Brown is to have a good day out there. So I think if you're in a spot where you got to start him, right? Who has to start Hollywood Brown at this point in the season? But if you have him, he might be that playoff winner for you, I guess. Gotta go down.
But also teams haven't seen him all year, so that initial game, might be the one to start him out in. Maybe a touchdown or two. I'm still starting DeAndre Hopkins myself, but
yeah, I would. I mean, I don't know if I think I'm starting Hopkins maybe on like one team.
Well, what my situation was when Hollywood Brown went down, instead of cutting him, I put him on IR and I picked up DeAndre Hopkins. So now,
see. So are you starting Brown and Hopkins? Or are you starting Hopkins in place of?
No, I'm starting Hopkins, but now I'm debating whether or not I want to cut Worthy and keep Brown, or whether
you can't have three Chiefs receivers, right? You can't have all three of them. Let's just start all three, James. Just start them every week. Somebody's bound to get something.
Just throw it on the wall and hope something sticks. Right?
Something's gonna stick, man. Somebody's gonna blow up.
So we do have some matchups this week, and I'm going to go, of course, as I always do. Let's see. And I'm going to go to the NFL site here on our stardoms and situms this week. I don't know. Some sites take a while to load up. Some don't. But let's see.
I think I might drop Worthy myself in a couple leagues. Man.
So one
interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So I was starting out here with let's see. Some of the matchups that people are talking about, and one was Keenan Allen as a stardom against that depleted Detroit defense. You have Detroit going against Chicago.
Hmm.
As you know, Detroit also lost in two more cornerbacks, I should say, last week, along with David Montgomery. What's your
Yeah, that
thoughts
was
on this
crazy. What a
game here?
week, man. What a week. What a week. Last week was a lot of injuries.
So what's your thoughts here? On starting Keenan Allen against a depleted Detroit defense.
Depends on who else is Dunze playing and is Moore playing. Are all three of their receivers healthy?
Yes.
Then I don't understand what's different this week than any other week. All three of their receivers are healthy. Like it's not necessarily the competition, in my opinion, that dictates the issues with Chicago receivers. It's Chicago's internal issues. Caleb Williams' internal issues with the team more so than the defenses of the other teams, in my opinion. So going into this week would mean nothing different than what last week meant for me when it comes to Chicago. If all three guys are out there, in order for me would be DJ Moore at one. And Odunze and Allen tend to flip. I mean, I feel like Allen, maybe they're flipping more because Allen had injury issues kind of throughout the season, whereas Odunze's kind of been there for the most part. But they're not guys that are hitting on every game. You know what I mean? So I would say, and nobody is, but I like DJ Moore a little bit more consistently because I think that he is the one there. But the other two guys are still like any other week. It doesn't matter who Detroit has out there.
You're right about DJ Moore being the number one, but Allen seems to be more of his go-to guy. If you look at
Allen catch him up, man. You know, I love Keenan Allen, by the way, because he's a great receiver. Keenan Allen's a great receiver. He has great hands, man. He's a great receiver. I think health really has been the issue. This has been an underwhelming season for him as comparison to his Charger seasons. But I think he's a good back. I mean, starting Keenan Allen isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just not exciting to me. It's not like I'm like rushing to go out and see how many rosters I have Keenan Allen on and throw him into the lineup. You know what I mean?
Okay. Okay, let's see. We all have let's see here. Tank Dell. Do you think that he's going to be a factor? When he's the number 3 wide receiver, but we haven't really heard a lot from
he should be 2 now,
Stephon,
though, right? Because that was because Stephon's hurt.
Stephon
Diggs has been hurt, so Diggs is out, so he's number 2 receiver. Nico Collins is playing, right. So with Tank Dell being at the number 2 spot, it's kind of similar to what I feel like has been a theme on this show, James, for us the last few weeks, and that's kind of who are you comparing it to? You know what I mean? Who do you have that you can compare him to start to? Because if Tank Dell being the number 2 receiver, CJ Stroud has been an up and down year for him, believe me.
Yes, it has.
But with a year like that and with a receiver like that, you just have to have better options. Now, you know what I mean? Like you have to have. This is more like your last question, right? Is it a Keenan Allen or Tank Dell type? So you see what I'm saying? Now we're getting into like questions where maybe. But if you don't have another player of a number 2 caliber wide receiver on your roster for another team, then I think you got to give Tank Dell a look. It's hard to bench him.
Joe Mixon, start him or sit him?
Same. Hard to bench. How do you bench him? If you've had Joe Mixon up to this point, it's kind of like the Najee Harris situation that we always talk about on this show. You got to dance with the one that brung you sometimes. You know what I mean? And whenever I don't, I had to put Najee. Let me tell you, I put Najee out my lineup for 15 minutes today. Put him right back in there. I'm like, you know what? I'm going down with the ship. Whatever Najee does, I'm doing. You know what I mean? Because he's brought me here. I picked him up off the bench, and I've won almost every game I've had him in. You know what I mean? And I lost the game I took him out. So I'm like, at this point, I'm going to dance with the one who brought me. And I have a team. My playoff team, my number 1 team has Joe Mixon on it. Joe Mixon and Saquon Barkley. I got to dance with the one who brought me here. He got me to number 1. I can't drop him now. But underwhelming performance for sure, I think, as of late. But hard to sit Joe Mixon, man.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a matchup for you. Cooper Rush against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay, they're especially with the a Falcon loss would be 2 games up in their division. What do you think here? You think Cooper is a good start against Tampa Bay's defense?
Cooper Rush, like starting him as your quarterback. Like I am playing fantasy and Cooper Rush is my quarterback. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think that we even need to have that conversation. Like, I feel like the conversation should have stopped right there. I mean, if I understand the question correctly, we can move on to a different question. Why is Cooper Rush your quarterback? In week 16 of 2024, why is Cooper Rush, why is that the guy you got to run out there? Why is there not a better guy on your bench that you can go find? Now, Cooper Rush is one of those guys, like if we're talking just football, James, he can go in there and have a sneaky game. Like, let's not discount the guy from a football standpoint. And I'm divorcing fantasy. From a football standpoint, can he come in there and win a game and CeeDee Lamb go off for like 120 yards? Yes, it absolutely can happen because we've seen it happen. So it can happen. But I just feel like you have better options, better floor options there. You should have better floor options at Bo Nix or something. You should have a better floor. Maybe not Bo Nix now, but you see what I'm saying? Like, you should have better floor options than Cooper Rush.
Yeah, Bo Nix was the worst game he had was Thursday. Of course, that was a game that I decided to start him in my Smash Up Sports.
Yes, I did notice that.
Yeah. Amir Abdul, we a lot of
He's
guys
had some good games, huh?
Was riding with, Sincere McCormick got hurt last week. So once again, you're running back by attrition.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. Like, that's one of the ones I like because why not? I mean, he got thrown in there in like a spot start, I think a couple weeks or so ago. He handled business. And
he's playing against Jacksonville.
Yeah, I wouldn't be scared to. If you just look at your team, like your team, if you have a better option than Abdullah, great. But he shouldn't be your last option because I think that you brought up a couple good things. One, he's going to be the lead back. Two, you got to look at the team he's going against. And in my opinion, you can add three. His pass performance hasn't been bad. So all those things would usually add up to a guy that I'm not exactly sad to put in my lineup. I'm not super excited because would I rather have the other players we were talking about, like a Mixon, a Bijan, or something like that? Of course. But if I have to have an Abdullah, I think that when you look at the tier of backs he's in, he's the top of that tier.
Now, here's a guy that I've been leery of all season. And he's steady, but to me, it's about the team that he's on. And I'm talking about Ramadi Stevenson. Mm-hmm. He's the number one running back for New England. If you drafted him, late in the draft, maybe he was your running back, your flex running back, or maybe if you had to, your running back too. But this week, he's matched up against the Bills. What's your thoughts there? This is not just some guy that you probably picked up off waivers. You might have. He was.
Ramondre is that guy that if you don't start him, man, if you don't start him, he's gonna have 20 down there on that bench. We all know how Ramondre works. You Lord forbid, you don't put him in your lineup. Ramondre reminds me of the running back version of Gabe Davis of the last few years. Lord forbid you don't put Gabe Davis in your lineup when he was playing for the Bills, because that's going to be the week he has 40. And the thing is, it's like that's kind of where you've been with Ramondre. Like, how do you if you've been riding with Ramondre up to this point, if you have an Abdullah versus Ramondre situation, this is where you can kind of start looking at guys. Because an Abdullah situation is where you might have a late season player that's kind of coming on due to circumstance, okay? And then you have a Ramondre who's a guy that gets drafted during draft season, all the way to the beginning of the season. And then you get to the point now where you can actually look at these two guys and look at them and say, hey, well, I don't know. You wouldn't have said that in the beginning of the season, but now you get to this point. If you do have an Abdullah and a Ramondre, you will look at that. You will look at that matchup. You will look at the player and say, hey, the names on the back of the jerseys are not going to tell the whole tape here. You know what I mean? You might have to make a decision. So if you have to make a decision like that, I get it. If you don't have any other backs of Ramondre Stevenson's caliber, he might fall into the end zone. So I think you have to put him out there.
Okay, another guy that you got to run out there, kind of like Abdullah, because of the injury to Tony Pollard, Rajay Spears, and he has a matchup against the Colts. The Colts still have an outside chance at making the playoffs. Titans, Will Levis, very disappointing season. Even after, we knew it was going to be kind of downhill after getting rid of.
Yeah, when Henry
King
gone
Henry.
and
Right.
stuff like that. Yeah, for sure.
What's your thoughts in this matchup, Taraji against that? Because you might have, if you're in a deeper league, you might have handcuffed Taraji to Tony since Tony's out.
Maybe you did. I mean, it's if I had when I was talking about those tiers of running backs and the Tajay Spears Abdullah situation, right? So and I'm going to keep bringing him up because I think it's good from a contextual standpoint from when we're talking about whether we will choose one player over another player. You got to look at what I would be thinking about. What kind of player would have to be available for me to think about that player? And the two players that you've named so far are players that I would think about an Abdullah over. Because I would say, hey, well, if I have an Abdullah to choose from or a Tajay Spears, I think I think I might go Abdullah again. This might be two in a row where I'm going to go just based on matchup and what the recent history has been. You know what I mean? But at the same time, though, one thing is you do have to think about, and this is kind of made me revisit my Abdullah situation, is Ritter still the quarterback for the Raiders? It's not going to be Minshew. If it's Desmond Ritter?
No, it's still Ritter as of today. I mean, I haven't heard anything different.
So those are the situations that scare me because I think we still have Will Levis and Drake May, right? Drake May still out there for New England and Will Levis for Tennessee. They still have their starting QBs. So that could be a little bit of an equalizer. Now you're making like a decision, you know what I mean, between the few because you're saying, well, at least these guys still have their starters. Maybe that it enables them to get downfield more. When you look at the last game, Abdullah scored. And I keep saying Abdullah. I'm not sure if I'm adding an A or not, but he scored. But it was at the very end of the game. He went 3 quarters doing almost nothing, So that's something that sometimes you got to pay attention to too. It's garbage time, pretty much scoring, or when the urgency was needed the most at the end of the fourth, and they really start driving downfield. And the Falcons are kind of taking their foot off the gas there from a defensive perspective. So, I like these guys to start, but I think I still might think about Abdul over them due to matchup. But none of these guys I'm excited about. These guys, this whole tier we're discussing is the not exciting tier.
Well, let's talk about some wide receivers. And the guy that I want to talk about first is a guy that I've kind of kept on my bench all season, but I like him. The only drawback is that it seems quarterbacks are doing what they haven't done before. They're throwing to the guy that's open, not the guy that's their favorite. We have numerous quarterbacks that have even this week. I believe it was a Thursday night's game where we had 8 different wide receivers catching passes. Where back in the day it might be, you could narrow it down to 3. You got a tight end, you got this guy, and maybe one guy out the backfield. Quarterbacks are starting to open up their field of vision, and one guy that I like, and especially with the absence of George Pickens, is Calvin Austin III. I know,
Calvin Austin III. Interesting.
A lot of people, Mike Williams came. He's caught 1 touchdown pass since he's been there. He's been relatively silent.
I forgot he was even there.
Austin does get some targets, and he is, to me, viable, especially with the absence of George Pickens and the way that Russ throws the ball. So what's your thoughts here? Austin against the Ravens. You spoke of Najee Harris. We know that he's going to get his carries, but who's going to step up in the absence of George Pickens?
It's interesting because I wouldn't. What kind of situation do you have to be in to start a Calvin Austin? Like what kind of roster would you have to have, James, to start him? Like you have to, I would imagine if you're in a 2 wide receiver situation, I'm in a 3 wide receiver leagues and with a flex. So we start up to 4. So I think in a league like mine, and we have 10 players that are about 40 wide receivers. In a league like mine, I feel like you start to look at a guy like that because you're going so deep into the position. But when you look at a league that may have 2 to 3, is Calvin Austin penetrating that roster with 2 to 3 receivers? I don't know about that. But I do like your point of the passes got to go to somebody. They got to go to somebody, and the target's got to go to somebody, right? So that was why we kind of like the Jameis Winston situation, because when he was throwing it so much, we all know that at least your guys can get some targets. He might not catch them, but you're gonna get some targets because you're throwing them so much. So in this particular case, I agree that we have Freiermuth, right? We have Austin. Is Mike Williams going to operate as a 1 or the 2? We don't even know. Like who's going to operate as a 1? It would be crazy. Does Austin jump up to the 1 now? And wouldn't that be wild? Is he over Mike Williams?
Well, he's caught more passes than Mike Williams. He has more targets than Mike Williams, and how many targets is Warren gonna get?
Yeah, he's seeming like the de facto, right? The de facto 1. I just don't know if it's 1 in production the same way that Pickens is has been. But I don't think that's a crazy start. I don't think that's crazy logic. That's not crazy logic. If you can't get the name, let's say you have a name that you want that you can't get, then you start to target, at least I do, positions and who I feel might be the number 1 on a team when a player's injured, or number 2. And I'll give you an example where I'm starting Jalen McMillan for kind of the same reason. He moves up into a spot. He's a player at a decent start, so I'm going to put him in there. But that's because of Godwin being gone, not necessarily because I just love the player. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Otten being gone. So with Otten being gone and Godwin being gone, that made a better start for me for McMillan, but it takes sometimes those things, and I think that applies kind of to Austin here.
Let's talk about a little bit more about the Ravens matchup. What do you think about the starting Zay Flowers against Mr. Hands-on?
Porter Jr., man. Yeah, man. Start him. Zay Flowers, kidding me? Start him. To me, there's no universe where I don't start Zay Flowers. I'm always starting him. And because the thing is, I love, you never know. Lamar Jackson's he'll throw a bomb. It only takes a couple plays when you're playing with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen that can throw it the way they do. Few plays, even kind of Jaden Daniels with Terry McLaurin, you can fall into the end zone 1 or 2 plays with how they throw the ball. So absolutely, I'm starting Zay.
Okay, now the Steelers held Derrick Henry to 88 yards on their last meeting, but he only carried the ball 13 times. They held Saquon Barkley to the same number of yards, but he carried the ball 19 times. What do you think the odds are that Derrick Henry gets the ball more than 13 times this game?
Depends on how far what the game script calls for. The game script, if they get behind, then and they got to pass to kind of keep up, then Derrick Henry's not going to be out there. You'll see more, I think, of Justice Hill, I'd imagine. I think he's there pass catching back there. But if they were able to kind of get up on the Steelers, a grinded out game, defensive battle of attrition type game, where that's what I hope for. I hope for a Najee versus Derrick Henry game. I need that. I need a Najee versus Derrick Henry game, but I don't know if I'm gonna get that because the Steelers will learn how to score points, and we score points now. You know what I mean? So it ain't the same 13 to 10 win Steelers. We're actually putting up points this season, so it might turn into a shootout. You never know, but the lack of George Pickens being out there, I don't know. Never know.
What do you think about starting Bryce Young this week?
Oh, man, I love Bryce. But I mean, it's the same thing. Like, it's not, he's above. I will start Young over Cooper Rush, but these are names where if you got to think about these names, if you got to think about starting Bryce Young and week, 15 that we're in fantasy, is this week 15, 16 we're in right now? Either you have like a 15-person league, you have like a league with a massive amount of people in it. Maybe it's a 2-quarterback league. Absolutely, I'm starting Bryce Young. 1-quarterback league, I'm not.
Uh, but what about the matchup?
Still not starting them. Like, there's certain plays I don't look at all. I don't care who. I don't care if they're playing like the bad news Bears. I'm not starting them. You know what I mean? Because end of the day, like usually you have a guy. So one of the things when we talk about these questions is not necessarily an indictment on the player. It's an indictment on the player versus who you have. So if I have Jaden Daniels and Brock Purdy on my team now, the chances of a Bryce Young starting, it's just, come on, man. It's just not going to happen. And likely with a lot of teams, especially at this point in the season, that's kind of your situation. You probably have a guy that's already starting there. So to start a Bryce, you need to replace the guy you have. So usually, unless you're injured at that position, you're not looking to replace the guy no matter who the matchup is on a guy that's available.
What about any of the 49ers wide receivers? You got
Depressing me, man. Goodness gracious.
I mean, you talk about a battle of attrition, right?
Man, depression because that was my team. You know how sometimes my draft strategy this year, James, was heavy 49ers stack, Chiefs stack, and I had it all together. I had Rashee Rice, I had Isaiah Pacheco, I had my Chiefs taken care of. I had Brandon Ayuk, I had Christian McCaffrey, and then I had Brock Purdy for good measure. I had the 49ers taken care of. 49ers a disaster. And I won every game after Brandon Ayuk was not on my roster no more. I lost every game with Brandon Ayuk, and then I won every game without him. Almost. I think maybe I lost my last playoff game this week, but I went on a massive run of like a 5 to 6 week win streak, and this is after Brandon Ayuk went down. I thought I didn't have to put him in my lineup. So, Jawan Jennings, is it going to be him? Is it going to be Deebo Samuel? It's going to be the kid Ricky Pierce. Who's going to be? We don't know. But I will tell you this though: when we talk about Brock Purdy's situation,
week, right?
I think he's out. I think Garindo's out.
Right. So you're down to Ricky, whatever. Who was
Pearson? Pearsall's out there. Pearsall's running out there, and I'm not sure who's I don't know who their back is.
That's what I was going to say. You're down to your number 5 running back. What's his name?
Exactly. Brock Purdy's going to pass the ball around. Kyle Shanahan's good at getting them to generate yardage, so that somebody's going to catch the ball. But is it going to be Kittle, Samuel, Jennings? Who's it going to be? I don't know. We don't know. So I'm staying away from the 49ers unless I have to play them. And then if I had to play them, Samuel Jennings seemed like to be the answer there. Of course, Kittle. Kittle's a must start, so that's not even counting him.
All right, well, you might not have had Cooper Rush, but you might have grabbed Rico Dowell at the beginning of
right?
During the draft. Do you start him this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, look at what he's been doing. Like, Dowell's one of those backs you got to start. You have to start him because he's produced. And at the same time, when you're looking at, I remember I got offered a trade. It was funny because somebody offered me to trade. I had DJ Moore, and they offered me a trade for Rick Dowdle or DJ Moore. For DJ Moore, I turned down that trade, but countered with Chase Brown. I said, no, I don't want Dowdle. Give me Chase Brown, and I was able to get that trade done for Chase Brown, which has been pretty good for me. But Dowdle, when I look back, wouldn't have been terrible. You know what I mean? I like Chase. I like the fact that I took Chase Brown more, but Dowdle wouldn't have been a bum. So I think that if you got to start him, you're not sad about that.
Okay. What about Smith Najigba against they're playing Minnesota this week? Minnesota is going to Seattle, but Seattle is also playing for their playoff life. Your thoughts here?
Start. JSN, come on, man. You start. You have to have a wealth of riches to sit some of these guys. Like, and I do on my championship. I think we went down this last week.
Remember now, at the beginning of the season, you had Metcalf and Lockett ahead of Smith and Najigba.
But I felt that was a kind of like a Zach Moss, Chase Brown situation, though. I think your players, if you start fantasy and you've been playing for a while, and you start fantasy and you know the game, you know that eventually who's going to have the job. Eventually, there might be players working their way into it, but I had no doubt that JSN at the very least was going to be the number 2 receiver here. at the very least. Now, Lockett, the thing about Lockett is Lockett's got a great floor to me, especially in the beginning of the season. Good safety valve there to get you some points for your team. But I think the upside was always with JSN, and I still think it is. And Metcalf's just the guy. I think that if you had to go Metcalf, JSN, you have a decision here. You have a decision to make because Metcalf, we all know, with how he runs, 1 or 2 catches, he'll have like 30 points. So that's going to be your decision right there. Not do you start JSN, but if you have Metcalf and JSN, which one do you start? And I think that's a more challenging question.
Do you think that Trey McBride finally gets a touchdown?
I hope so, because I've had him, man. I've had him. He's been carrying me.
938 yards, but not a TD.
I hope so. Fall in there for me, man. I need him this week. That's my tight end on my home team that I'm in that I lost this past week. So I'm in third place game. That's my tight end on that team. But he's carried me all year, man, and I hope he does. But it's crazy how a guy, because it reminds me of Puka last year, because I had Puka last year. And Puka would have massive yards, but was not catching touchdowns. Like he'd have a massive amount of yards and targets, but no touchdowns. And then I would go and have double-digit points just based on yardage and targets and catches. And similar situation with Trey McBride this year. The points that I'm getting from Trey McBride are stem from catches, targets, catches, and yards. So, I mean, I'll take it. He's been a very solid tight end for me, so I'll take it. But I hope he falls into the end zone today.
Yeah,
or this week.
He's had 116 targets.
That's amazing, right?
89 receptions. And like
he's almost got 100 receptions. Like a great receiver to have 100 receptions. He's got to have a tight end. 100 receptions.
And no TDs.
No touchdowns. Right. Wow.
What about Jacoby Myers? They have a very favorable matchup, and Jacoby's a guy that's probably been in your lineup from the beginning. If you drafted Jacoby, you might not have started him, but he's certainly probably been on your bench if you drafted him. But is this a week that you think you can fire him up? Who are they playing? Are they the ones playing Jacksonville this week?
Yeah, the ones we're talking about are playing Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad at starting Jacoby Myers. I'm not mad at that. That's not a name where I'm like, you should really be thinking twice. But it's just the offense is what's made him unattractive. I mean, you look at that offense, and the only name is Brock Bowers on that offense. It's the only name I see there. When I look at the Raiders roster, I see Brock Bowers. If I look at the Raiders roster today, I probably will see Brock Bowers. And then it'll be like Abdul, maybe because he's coming up the ranks. But from a consistency standpoint, is Bowers and then maybe Myers. So if you've had Myers on your team up to this point, and let's say you've had him in your lineup, let's just do this both ways. You've had him in your lineup up to this point, then I don't see any reason to change now, especially based on the matchup. But if you had him on your bench all the time because you haven't felt he was the best option for you, then I think you're probably going to have the same opinion here now because Jacoby Myers, I don't think, has a QB that's going to move the meter for him, So that's going to be a ceiling for him because of that.
Speaking of Najee, we saw last week he just produced 21 yards on 7 touches. Do you think this is a comeback game against the Ravens, or do you think that the Ravens, like we did to Derek in Pittsburgh, do you think that they'll hold him under 100?
Maybe rushing. I think it's harder to hold Najee under 100 scrimmage. But rush, because of this amount of work he gets, it depends on how much Warren cuts into that. But the amount of carries and stuff that Najee typically gets, he can get out to usually around 100 yards. He doesn't always hit 100 yards. So we're saying maybe he hits like 89 yards because sometimes you can still have serviceable fantasy days with these yardage. You know what I mean? So you might look at your points and you might say, hey, I got pretty good points. But then you look at the yards, man, only had like 50 yards. But so it's kind of like with Najee, he could be held under 100. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to have a bad fantasy day. But it's what I'm kind of trying to say. Like they're not exactly the same thing. because the Ravens don't. When I looked at Najee's last game against the Ravens, they didn't necessarily shut him down the same way that the Steelers had shut down Henry. Last game they played. But we always know the divisional games are so super toss up, man. All I know is I got I'm running them out there and hoping for the best.
Chuba Hubbard.
Start him. No question. Without question for me, he's on my backs on my championship team are Chuba Hubbard, Saquon Barkley, and Joe Mixon. Start all two. I'll run it, and they've taken me all the way up to first place. So now I'm just trying to close the deal.
What about Bucky Irving against the Dallas defense?
I gotta see what Bucky's been doing. Has Rachaad White been cutting into his carries? I think Rachaad White fell into the end zone fairly recently, a couple games ago.
Well, Bucky was hurt, and I think this is his first week back after 2 weeks, but he's cleared 100 yards for the second time, and he continues to be. He's averaging what 7.5 yards per carry.
First game coming off an injury.
He's ranked 5th right now in yards per touch and 6th in broken tackles.
If it's his first game, did you say this is his first game after the injury?
I think this is his first game back because I think White started last week. I'm pretty sure Bucky was out last week.
Okay. You know how I feel about these first game backs, man. First game backs always.
But he's playing against the Cowboys.
It's not necessarily the matchup I'm concerned about. It's similar to, I think, another team we were talking about with the Bears when I was saying, hey, I'm not necessarily worried about who they're playing. I'm worried about them. And that's kind of how I worry about players when they come back from injuries, because it's not necessarily who they're playing. I'm worried about the coach not putting them in for the amount of snaps they usually play. I'm worried about reduction in activity, reduction in being out there. You can say your guy is starting, like Pacheco's first game. I put Pacheco back in the very first game he played. But it was pretty much a running back by committee with Hunt and Pacheco. You know what I mean? They ease these guys back in. They don't usually throw them in there, and now you have a Najee Harris or Derrick Henry workload or Saquon workload. They throw you back in. They kind of like ease you back into that load. And I worry more about it with teams that are winning without you. I worry more about it because they don't need to work you back in quickly because they're winning when you weren't even there. They were winning. So if you have Bucky Irving on your team, it's hard to sit a guy that you know can go for 100. So I wouldn't want to sit him. I don't want to sit him. I would hope to have better options, but I don't want to sit him. It'd be hard to sit him. We're getting to the Abdul kind of situation again. A guy I got to bring up. If you got this guy or this guy, maybe, but I don't like the feeling of sitting Bucky Irving.
Well, let's talk about the Chiefs for a minute because, you mentioned, Kareem Hunt. We know that Pacheco's back. But then all of a sudden, Ryan catches 2 touchdowns or runs in for a touchdown. Then you have instead of DeAndre Hopkins catching a touchdown, Worthy runs for 1 and Kelsey catches 2.
I'm concerned about that. You're making me look at my roster. You're making me rethink my decision of putting Pacheco in here. Because now I got to go back and look and see, do I really want to start Pacheco? If I start him, I got to start him over Jerome Ford. I'm sorry. Yeah, Pacheco's in right now. I would have to put Jerome Ford in and take Pacheco out.
Well, Kareem Hunt is out.
Kareem Hunt's out?
Yeah, Kareem Hunt is out.
Oh, well, phone's going back down. We're this is problem over, fellas. We're back. Pacheco's fire him up. Fire him up. I'm ready. Well, I mean, you just put that to bed very quick. You started the problem, James, and you ended the problem in the same conversation.
Okay. All right. So some of your favorite stardom sit-ems this week. I've given you most of mine.
I don't really have a lot because when you get into this fantasy, I really feel like when we get to this point in the season, your team is just kind of locked. Like if you're in a fantasy playoffs, you're, at least from my standpoint, I don't know if it's because maybe I'm just superstitious. I just don't mess with it that much. And you saw what happened when I took out Najee. I lost. You saw what happened when I tried to mess with the secret sauce. So at that point, I'm just like, listen, man, if I'm gonna win or lose, I'm gonna at least go with the lineup that I've been winning with the most. You know what I mean? Because I can't live with one of those guys going off. I can live with a guy that I haven't played all season going off. I really can, because I haven't played him all season. And if he goes off, he goes off. I can't live with a Najee having 20 or 30 on my bench when I know that I've been starting him in all my winning games. You know what I mean? So it's like I feel like that with a lot of my teams. I'm not doing anything to touch them. I'm not even remotely trying to change them unless I feel like Tyrone Tracy. I'll give you an example. Tyrone Tracy was on my team, and he's still on my bench now, and he was in my starting lineup. But the reason he's not now is because last week, like, he was running back by committee with Singletary. I didn't see him out there a lot. Nobody likes looking at the TV and constantly not seeing your guy in the backfield, and there was a lot of that with Tyrone Tracy. He's been practicing, but practicing in a limited capacity. So I'll make a change because of that, and the fact that they don't have a quarterback anymore. You know what I mean? So I make a change because of that. But usually I'm not looking at stardom situms and adjusting my championship teams.
Okay, all right. I'm looking at our league here, and I'm trying to get our playoff picture. And
I think I'm playing Demetrius and Bill in one. So I think I'm playing Demetrius in one and Bill in another.
All right, let's see. Okay, where are we at here in the playoffs?
I'll pull it up here in my ESPN as well. I have it right here. Let's go ahead and throw that up real quick. Okay. Yeah, this is confusing. Like, I didn't know the round 1-2 situation. I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on here.
Okay, so are you making any adjustments this week? Considering that game started Thursday, so you might be up a little bit, or you might be.
Well, I'm gonna have to take out Otten because he's doubtful. I have him in at my tight end position, so I'm gonna have to take him out. But looking around here though, let me see. Kincaid, Strange, Ferguson. Man, I would like to throw Zach Ertz in there. Just only because I love, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put Kincaid in. I'm gonna put in Kincaid. I'm gonna drop Knox, save, confirm, and then I'm gonna start Kincaid instead of Cade Otton. So that is an adjustment I make because my guy Cade Otton's been getting me through, man. He's won me a couple weeks. I don't know if you've been starting him on any of your teams, man, but he's been a guy.
Yeah, Cade Otton and Jonnu Smith have both been putting up points. Jonnu's playing this week though, but let's see. I'm looking at my lineup this week. I've got 12 points for my kicker. I had Will Lutz.
Nice, right?
With Denver, but my defense is Kansas City. I went with them all season, and it's been kind of up and down.
Up and down, brothers. Not the Kansas City defense of last year, from a fantasy standpoint, anyway.
No, definitely not. I lost David Montgomery.
Man, heartbreaking, right now. Like, I have a friend who lost 4 players last week, and they were all players. And Montgomery was one of those guys.
Yeah. So in my flex, I put in AJ Brown.
Not bad flex. Absolutely.
They're at home, and they're playing against Washington.
There's no world I don't start AJ Brown. He's starting every match.
My tight end, I started Sam Laporta. They're playing.
I start Sam every match.
They're playing against Chicago. I thought that was good. Now I did have to start Jawan Jennings. I'm thinking. I'm really.
He can get you 50, James. It's not sleep. We all know Jawan can go out here and get you 50.
Right.
Every now and then.
But I do have Jameis Williams on my bench.
Is he playing this week, Jameson?
Yeah, he's playing this week.
Man, now that's a decision to make right there, right?
right.
because James
Because
Williams, we all know he's high explosive possibilities
now
with that kid.
he's another one that can go off and give you,
Yes, absolutely,
at any time.
absolutely.
And
And that's a good choice. That's a now this is one of the questions when we're talking about player versus player. This is a lot closer of a choice here because they
well,
both have quarterbacks that can get it to them.
right.
It's
But
this is like a coin flip here.
Do I have more confidence in Jared Goff being able to get the ball to Williams, or do I have more confidence in Brock Purdy getting the ball to Jennings? Both of San Francisco is coming east. They're playing Miami. We know how usually that works out with West Coast teams coming east. But
It's not
Jameson,
exactly in the element. That's
right? And Jameson is playing at home. Detroit is playing at home. So
in the dome. So
right.
man, goodness, man, right? Like that's such a toss up to me because both those players are explosive, man. They're both players explosive. They can both give you those points on a few plays.
Now my other wide receiver is DK Metcalf. So,
you have all explosive guys. You got guys like you can have 150 or you can have 20 points from your wide receivers at the end of this week. Yeah. That's how your upside is through the roof over there, James.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. And I can start Jameson in place of either one of them.
Yeah,
so, now my running backs are a little bit different, but it's not a major problem because I do have as my running back 2, I have DeAndre Swift. Now I do have options because I can start Rico Dow in his place.
God, I think I would, right? Over Swift?
Yes. So, like I said, but once again, I've lost Garendo and David Montgomery. So,
and you have 2 backs. You're starting 2 backs, right? You're
right.
gonna put a wide receiver in your flex.
My flex was AJ Brown.
Okay, so yeah, you started with your flex. Okay, so you have the wide receiver in your flex. That means you're only gonna start 2 backs, and that means you have to be one of the 2 backs you would have to start. Would be, Dow. And who is your other main back that you're starting?
Connor,
yeah, he's starting. So then it's definitely the other 2. I like Dow, but Swift, man, I don't know. Swift can have sneaky good games, man. I don't know if you've been paying attention.
I know
DeAndre Swift, man. He's not as bad as the Bears seem to be as bad. Like, we look at him, he's maybe one of the best. I got to look at him and see if literally is DeAndre Swift the best fantasy player on the Bears. Like, he's in my head, if I'm just going off.
He's averaging almost 4. He's giving you almost 14 points per game as a fantasy.
What other Bears players doing that? Like, I don't think you're getting that from DJ Moore. I gotta look and see, but I don't know if you're getting that from DJ Moore. I gotta go look and see.
No, you're not getting that from DJ Moore. That's the reason why I'm saying.
So he's probably their best fantasy player. Is DeAndre Swift? Isn't that crazy? Who would have had that on their bingo card coming into the year?
Yeah.
So then, let me think. Then, can you sit a team's best player? Can you sit a team's best player if you happen to have that player? That's an intriguing question because when you're looking at Dallas, we all know it's going to be Lamb and then Dow. Right. I don't know. That's because my instincts say start Dow because I've been seeing what he's been doing the last few weeks, and I just think the Bears can be an absolute dumpster fire, a disaster at times. But if you pay attention to fantasy, you know that that's not necessarily the case for DeAndre Swift. Like, he's been more than serviceable fantasy back.
And they're playing in the dome in the dome, Detroit.
Divisional too. Divisional.
Right. So you don't have to worry about weather being a factor, know. But it is a divisional game, even though Chicago's out of it.
Right. So that means nothing with these division games.
Right.
Okay, so. Man, I don't know. I'm stumped there, man, because my instinct is to start Dow there. But I would not be mad at all if somebody started Swift. Like this is a toss-up situation. I'm not pissed at starting either one of these guys. These are just a little bit harder than the other questions we've had.
Well, the good thing is that I have another day also
to kind of like mull it over a bit there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I did have an interesting situation at quarterback. I had my two quarterbacks are Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
I started Josh.
Wow. What league is this? Is this our league?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was this a keeper? This has been a keeper, one of the keeper leagues here. Because how in the world would you have Lamar and Josh Allen?
Good pick.
There's no draft where somebody comes out of that draft with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen unless they're just drafting foolishly and going like 2-3 for their QBs.
Well, like I said, those were. I'm not sure how I ended up with them, but I might have picked Josh Allen in the first round and Lamar Jackson in the
can't
third
sit
round.
Josh right now, bro. I was looking at a Josh Allen projection on somebody else's phone yesterday, and it was almost 50 points. And I said, bro, that's his projection. His projection is 49. Like you cannot sit 49-point projection anywhere. And so I'm like, yo, that means this guy has been on an absolute tear. The only time that you don't start Lamar Jackson is when you have Josh Allen.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in our league,
and Lamar versus Steelers too. No, absolutely not. No, I am starting Josh Allen. I'm starting Josh Allen anyway, but Lamar, I'm definitely starting Josh Allen.
Yeah. So that's my lineup in the sports crib for this week. So
let me look at my lineup in the sports crib for that league. Let me see if I can match that lineup because in the sports crib I think that's the lineup I have Jalen Hurts in that league. Yeah, Jalen Hurts, Brian Robinson Jr., Kyron Williams. I'm starting JSN this week. Monroe St. Brown, Kincaid, Achan, Cardinals defense, Chris Boswell. I got to throw a Steeler in there. I have a Steeler on almost all my teams. I do not recommend doing stuff like that, but I have a Steeler like on pretty much every team. I try to put a Steeler and a Falcon on like every team I have.
Okay. Let's see. You're playing. Who's that?
I have Bill in one league and Demetrius in another. Which one are you talking about? You talking about the sports crib league?
The sports crib. Yeah.
I'm playing Bill.
Who are you playing?
Bill.
Is that Bill? Okay. That must be me playing
W.S. Carroll, right?
That must be me playing Demetrius, Detroit versus everybody.
Yeah. And I'm playing Demetrius in the extraordinary. Generally, I'm playing Demetrius in that league.
Yeah, I
Demetrius won it last year. Demetrius won the shirt last year. So
yeah, Demetrius won the shirt last year. I have a shirt. Demetrius has a shirt. We'll see who gets number 3.
I'm gonna try to get it.
But I kind of smoked Demetrius last week.
Goodness gracious!
Almost 30 points. So
we need to get Demetrius on the sports crib and then have him come and defend himself here at some point, man. That's a man smoke. Goodness, 30 points. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
But if you had Josh Allen, you were smoking everybody at 30 points. If you had Josh Allen the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I mean, it took 50 points to beat you to get to the
right. Josh Allen had 50. You beat me by like 7 or something like that. They're like, oh, goodness gracious. It took 50. If Josh Allen had 40, I would have won that game. That means you got to start him, James. You ain't sitting Josh. You can't sit him.
No. All right, man. Well, let's put our final line out here. It's already past the time for the game to get started. So
yeah, game time, man.
Let's get our last final line that's up here. Our final. I'm going to give you the final word here. What's your best league, and what are you looking forward to this week?
My best league is the league that I have Chase and our league is like a keeper league. So in our league, that's definitely my best roster because in that league I have like Bijan Robinson, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb. Like so, I'm not going to really count that league because I can keep players. But in a league that's not a keeper league, where I am number 1 in, I have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Saquon Barkley, Chuba Hubbard, George Kittle, James Cook, Chris Boswell, my guy, and San Francisco's defense. Haven't even really been counting the defense. I'm not even sure what's going on there. Who is San Francisco playing? Miami? Yeah, I might see if I can switch them out. I'm going to try to get them out of here. That's not going to be my defense. I'm much see it, but that's the league that's my favorite league because it's the league that I'm number one in. It's my number one league. As a result, it's my favorite league.
Yeah, you're playing the number one team in our league, but my best team, Detroit, is my defense. As I said, I got Will Lutz for 12 points already for my kicker.
Nice. That's a nice way to go into the week, right?
Yes, it is. And for in this league, my flex is DJ Moore. My tight end is Mark Andrews. I'm running Patrick Taylor out there as my running back. Shows you how far I had to go down. But Saquon is my number one. And then I have Jordan Addison and Chase as my wide receivers, and Josh Allen as my quarterback. So
I love Addison, man. Addison, I love that guy, man. I've had him on a couple teams. I've had Addison on a team. Addison might become my new friend in Ayuk, man. I had Ayuk the last few years, and now I've had Addison for a couple of years in a row. And I think I'm going to play, by the way, just to end this show the right way. Do I put Indianapolis' defense in versus Tennessee? Because I told you I'm taking out the other defense because they're going to be playing Miami. I'm not going to chance that defense against Miami. So I can either put in Indianapolis versus Tennessee, and I also see available, I see Arizona to Carolina. Arizona at Carolina? Which one would you do there? Would you do Indianapolis versus Tennessee or Arizona at Carolina?
I would probably do Arizona at Carolina.
Arizona at Carolina.
Even though Bryce is coming on, I still think Arizona, in order to stay ahead of Seattle, they or stay even with Seattle, they need to win also. And I think Mr. Smurf, as Mr. Scott likes to call him.
Goodness gracious!
I think he has a good game. I'm looking forward to at some point Marvin Harrison has to have a breakout game. I'm just saying. At
some point.
I'm just saying. And I mean, Connor catches the ball out of the backfield also. So,
well, we'll see. I just put him in, so we just put Arizona in. We'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. I'll let you know. We'll let you know next week. Enjoy your holidays, everybody, and I'll be back on next week.
All right, my man. You have a good one, and look forward to finding out. And don't forget you guys sign up for Smash Mouth.
Do your smash up lineups.
He has a new contest on there, Reggie. Make sure you go and check it out.
Absolutely.
There's a new contest this week. As usual, there's cash prizes. Even though Chris wasn't here, make sure you guys check out SMASHUPSPORTS.com. They have a lot of different formats, a lot of different cards. And, we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Have a good week, Reggie. Talk to you next week.
Same to you. See you guys.
Going to watch this game now.
Watch football for hours for me. My rest of my day is gone. I'll see you later. And
there's a little NBA on too, so
I will not be checking for that today. You know what I mean? Yeah, guys.
All right, man. You have a good one. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you next week right here on our fantasy show.